888-589-8840. That's the number that you can use to connect with us. It's AFA Today on AFR Talk. And every single day, we're trying to obliterate confusion, amplify truth, and to pursue clarity. And thankful that you're on the journey with us as we represent, hopefully, the amplification of that truth better and better. Kevin McCullough is my name, and the phone number, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. The news this hour that North Dakota's abortion law, the first in its kind to recognize a heartbeat and call it a human, has been ruled unconstitutional by a district judge in North Dakota. We will see what happens there next. It will be an interesting road ahead for the North Dakotans, as it will be, I'm sure, for the Texans. You know, when you pass a law that voluntarily limits abortion within their state, the activists on the federal level, they can't be having that. They can't be having that. They gotta come wage war against you, which is also kind of good because then you're starting to force them to use up resources. So keep them tired, keep them worn out, keep them arguing until they lose. That's a great strategy, don't you think? Anyway, thanks to Allison Howard for being with us from Concerned Women for America. And if you want to know more about what they do, CWFA.org is the place where you can go and find that out. Okay, there was, and I'm going to take more of your calls because obviously there's a lot of you, especially from Texas, that want to weigh in. I'm looking up 4 calls in a row, all from Texas. We'll get to you in just a second. But I wanted to roll out these other 2 stories. One, because it's just shocking. Let me just be as blunt as possible here. How is what I'm about to describe to you right? How is it fair? How is it just? How is it good? Much less how is it sustainable? Some new numbers released yesterday, and if you want to see these, I've got them on the Facebook page. But for every one producer in the private sector, did you know that there are nearly 2 takers? Yeah, somebody did a survey, and they got down to the nitty-gritty of defining people that work in the private sector full-time, and they call those producers. People that take a benefit from the government, they called those people takers. They eliminated certain groups of takers, so they didn't even leave those in the numbers, like if you're a veteran. We don't feel like veterans are taking because they've served, so we excluded their number from the overall number. If you're disabled, and there are a number of other groups that we X'd out of that number. The number that was left over from able-bodied people that are taking from the system, 148 million takers in America. In the private sector, this does not include public employees, but in the because they're being paid out of the dollars that really, in essence, the private sector is paying in there. 86 million producers, 148 million takers in the country. Real simple question for you. Is that right? Is it fair? Is it just? Is it good? Is it sustainable? Can you continue to have 148 million people taking when you have only 86 million producing? 888-589-8840. That came out of the census study from 2012, and I'm sure it's only gotten worse into 2014. So we got that, and there was one other story. I'll just give you the details on this. Remember when Bill O'Reilly sat in front of the TV cameras at the Super Bowl, and he had 10 minutes with President Obama, and he said, what about this? President Obama answered, what about Benghazi? He answered him. And he said, what about this? And he answered him. And he said, hey, what about that IRS corruption thing? Any mass corruption going on there? Let me be clear. Bill, I'm sure there's not any mass corruption whatsoever. None. In fact, I would say there's not even a smidgen of corruption. Let me be clear. Not a smidgen of corruption. Not a smidgen of corruption, Mr. President. No, not a smidgen of corruption. Not at all. Not today. Not yesterday, Bill. Not next week. Not a smidgen of corruption. Well, it turns out that Judicial Watch, and this is being reported by U.S. News and World Report, not a conservative outlet, but Peter Roth's opening statement in his article about it says the so-called smoking gun proving the Internal Revenue Service played politics with those conservative groups seeking official nonprofit social welfare status over the last several years has finally been found. In a rash of documents provided under the Freedom of Information Act, a nonpartisan public group found that what in fact happened was that David Fish, acting as acting manager of the IRS exempt division, former IRS director of exempt organizations Lois Lerner, had emails going back and forth as part of a thread with people of the administration, and basically the messages said along the lines, "What can I say? Tell the administration they need to get on the stick. That the next election cycle's around the corner. This is a wonderful idea. That's why we suggested it. I think you told Greg all you can tell him, unless you want to tell him we're taking guidance plans suggestions." But basically what they're responding to there is this idea that they would use these organizations under the IRS slow-walking their applications basically over to the Justice Department and prosecuting some of them for illegal political speech. There was an entire intent to try to mangle these conservative groups, and that's why they were targeted. That's why they were set aside. That's why they were pulled out. In other words, and this is why Lois Lerner's not talking, but her emails are talking, and they've been found. Not a smidge of corruption, Bill. Not a smidge. We were just going to throw people in jail for what they were saying about my administration, but not a smidge of corruption. Yeah, we were going to throw the book at them, but not a smidge of corruption. We weren't trying to isolate anybody. Look, we just didn't want them disputing us in public. You know, I am the dear leader, Bill. And remind you, I gave you 10 minutes for the Super Bowl, so you should be like kissing my feet, Bill, because I'm the president and I don't have to put up with this. You know, ask me this question in the pre-interview. I don't have to answer it now. Not a smidge of corruption, Bill. Yeah, Lois Lerner's guilty as sin. She's going to go up the river. In fact, she's going to plead the fifth and not be able to plead the fifth because she's going to try to say something beforehand. It's going to be messy, Bill. Yeah, I just got to tell you that. But no, not a smidge of corruption. And by the way, stop grinning at me because I don't like it. This is a mess. But not a smidge, not a smidge. All right, so those are the other two things I just wanted to bring to your attention today. But we're talking mainly about the North Dakota story and this judge that somehow is confused, that somehow a heartbeat might actually indicate a human being in there. 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Let's talk to Jay in Texas. Hi, Jay. Welcome. You're first.
Hey, Kevin, my point is really an expansion of your call from this fellow from New York, pointing out the disproportionate killing of black babies, unborn babies, in New York. But that brings to mind what we need to do, those of us who want to support the life of that child, is to go step back to the times of about 60 years ago to Nazi Germany. Well, how did Hitler justify killing those 6 million people in that ovens in Auschwitz and Dachau, etc.? And basically, it's that same line of thinking. Hitler justified that because those were killings of convenience for Hitler and his minions. I think if those of us who support life can get this question reframed, I think that we'd have a good talking point there.
Reframed to what? What should it be reframed
in other words,
to?
The issue is Hitler killed, if you remember, he not only killed the Jews, he was killing the
Right. But you just said, and I just want you to answer my question, Jay. What? How do you reframe the issue? You said we need to reframe it.
Because
how do we reframe it?
We need to bring out where this thinking comes from. It doesn't come with
they don't care.
Sanger.
Jay, the progressives don't care. If you say they're like Hitler, it doesn't mean anything. What we have to do is we have to embarrass them with morality. We have to say, look, you're saying choice and your convenience is more valuable than the life of a human being.
That was Hitler's argument. I don't know how familiar you are. Did you ever read Mein Kampf?
I'm very familiar with World War II and Hitler. And in fact, the main rationale, and you never really got to it, I was kind of hoping you would. I'll fill them in for you. The main rationale that he used for why he could morally justify killing the ones that he did is because he said they were lives that were worth not living, that were not worth living. In other words, in his mind, he had the ability to justify the value of whether or not someone's existence mattered. saying, well, they're just Jews, and we all believe that Jews are dogs, so they can't be expected to have a very meaningful existence. So he justified it, and that's why he killed disabled people and blacks and gays and all kinds of other groups as well. He said, well, they don't have any. There's no way that they can have a meaningful existence, so they deserve to die because it's a drain for everybody else to have that. And that's not totally different than what you're arguing now, Jay, and I understand that. But the point being, I don't want it doesn't have to be any more complicated than this. It's this simple. You're going to tell me, you're going to look me dead in the eye and tell me with a straight face that the convenience of your life has greater moral worth than the actual life of another human being. Are you willing to say that? Are you willing to say that, Mr., Mrs., whoever's arguing that abortion should remain? Is that what you're willing to say? That your convenience, your own personal convenience, is morally more valuable to the culture, society, the universe, God, that it's of greater value. Your convenience is more important and of greater value than actual life of a human being. Oh, you are willing to say that? Well, now I will say that you are like Hitler. But here's the thing. I don't think the average person will be willing to admit that. I think they'll shut down the conversation and walk away before they actually make the admission of what is true, which is that that's what you're arguing. When you argue freedom of choice, you're saying convenience, the mere idea of having a little bit easier is more important, is of greater moral worth than the actual life of a human being. An innocent human being, a child at that. 888-589-8840. Let's talk to Jimmy in Texas. Hi, Jimmy.
Hey, brother. How you doing?
Doing well.
Right.
Thanks for being here.
Yes, sir. Well, I just wanted to just comment and say, after the election, you got to realize that the executive branch elects federal judges, and honestly, I think we should press the Congress to streamline the impeachment process. This lifelong position, when they get in there, they think they're secure and they can do whatever they want, and that the overwhelming majority of people agree with our values. But I think, again, what you pointed out was 148 million takers. So, they're going to vote a certain way so that they can keep getting what they want, but they agree with our values. So, one's got to give way to the other. And so the reason that they vote a certain way is because they're afraid they're going to stop getting their checks. But then at the price of that is that we get abortion and we get, these judges.
Yeah, and Jimmy, let me correct some confusion for you there, because I understand what you're wanting to say, because those groups will say that's what they say their values are. But the truth is they don't share our values. And here's why I can say that, and this is going to really make some people mad. So I'm just going to apologize in advance, and you're just going to have to either hate me forever or forgive me. But if you say you are pro-life, but you vote for a person who is pro-death, then you're not pro-life. If you say, no, I'm a faithful churchgoer, and I believe that it was historically the right thing to do to vote for the guy for president, because, it was just a matter of racial fairness. It was the right thing to do because we had to be racially fair. We had to get past this issue. But you knew that he had on 4 times voted as a state representative in his own state legislature, as a state senator, I should say. You knew that he voted to let living children die, and you voted for him. That makes you guilty in their deaths. I'm tired of hearing people say, well, they share our values. They just want to cash their check. No, they don't share our values because their values are secondary to the money. It's about giving me my money, right? Instead of protecting the innocent and not letting a hair on their head be harmed. People that say, oh, I want my EBT card, that's more important than saving the life of an innocent human being, they don't share my values. They may think that they're pro-life. They may say, I'm against abortion. But if it's abortion and children continuing to be killed versus me getting my welfare check, nope, got to get the welfare check. We don't suffer for the cause of truth. We don't live We don't sacrifice for the cause of the innocent. And that's the values I'm talking about. Well, they share our values, Kev. They're just misguided on economic policy. No, they know what the economic policy is. They understand if I vote for one party, I get something for free that I didn't earn. And they also understand that in doing so, I'm continuing to help children die in the slaughter of the womb where they should be safest of anything else. They don't share my values. My values say, okay, first of all, God says I gotta earn what I need. So I have to go out and work, first and foremost. But secondly, even if I am working hard, but I need to give up that work to save the life of one, shouldn't I do that? If we saw a child about to be run over in the street by an oncoming car, and it was going to take a split second, but there was $1,000 flying from the heavens, and you said, I'll give it a second, I'm just going to grab me a piece of this before I run out and save his life. What would you do? If you grab the money before you save the kid, you don't share my values. I'm sorry, Jimmy. I'm not mad at anybody. It just came to me in a moment of clarity. I've heard that 1,000 times, and I've agreed with it. I've actually said it before. I don't agree with that, and I don't believe it anymore. If you worship at the altar of getting something for free versus saving the life of a child, you don't share Jesus's values. And I don't know how else to put it. So I'm sorry if I made you mad. I didn't mean to. Just got to speak truth and clear out the cobwebs of confusion because it's killing us. I'm Kevin McCullough. We'll observe Good Friday tomorrow, and we'll see you on Monday live again, and I hope you have a great weekend.